Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother, wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly. Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly. I don't know, we doubled up there. Sorry about that. But we are the broadcast that gets behind the full-scale.
You're good, Joseph. Loud and clear.
My mic is echoing. Like, I don't know. Someone needs to mute, please. Okay. So we broadcast every. Okay, sorry, I'm an idiot. We've got the regular crew is out this week, and I just did something goofy because yeah, we have different responsibilities. So sorry about that, everybody. So I'll just start from the beginning. Welcome to Tochnyi Weekly. We are a weekly broadcast. We broadcast every week from at 2100 Kyiv time. Please do like and subscribe the stream. Please like the stream and subscribe to Tochnyi, the channel. We appreciate everyone tuning in and bearing with me this week as I slowly go insane, apparently. So we have an excellent broadcast. First, I'm going to be reading the news after I regain my composure after my confusing myself. After that, we'll have a very brief report from German aid to Ukraine. And finally, we will have Jonathan is going to talk to us about Kharkiv. So without any further delay or any more audio mishaps from myself, I will go ahead and start with the news. Ukrainian engineers have introduced a new reconnaissance drone named WarDog, tailored specifically for artillery units, as announced by Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, on his Facebook page. The WarDog drone is designed to excel in reconnaissance missions conducted in challenging terrains amidst enemy electronic warfare systems. It prioritizes countering enemy EW, enabling reconnaissance even in environments where GPS signals are suppressed. The drone is capable of operating in autonomous, semi-autonomous, and manual flight modes to ensure mission effectiveness across diverse conditions. Featuring an autonomous flight duration of 60 minutes, the WarDog drone facilitates prolonged aerial surveillance and artillery fire correction. It boasts a maximum range of 10 kilometers with communication and up to 30 kilometers in autopilot mode, while maintaining a speed of 12 to 15 meters per second. Currently, the WarDog drone is being procured for Ukraine Defense Forces as part of the Army of Drones initiative. It has already seen deployment on the front lines, including in the Zaporizhia and Kharkiv directions, as well as in the vicinity of Kramatorsk in the Donetsk region. Notably, it successfully operated under conditions of GPS signal suppression at altitudes exceeding 50 meters, completing these tasks effectively. Military personnel have praised the WarDog's flight stability despite the absence of GPS signals, particularly its resilience to strong winds, which enables a clearer picture for framing and focus. Feedback from the military has prompted developers to enhance the UAV's functionality to further sharpen the artillery sights. Earlier, the Defense Procurement Agency of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine announced the second stage of a framework agreement for the procurement of unmanned aircraft systems. Corresponding documents for the acquisition of 3,000 Mavic 3E and Mavic 3 thermal drones with additional components have been published on the ProZorro system, as reported by Militarny. Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė, that's how I'm going to go. That's what I'm going to go with, has announced that Lithuania will purchase approximately 3,000 Lithuanian FPV drones for Ukraine, totaling 2 million euros. This decision was disclosed during a press conference with Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. Šimonytė highlighted Lithuania's significant support for Ukraine, noting the country has already provided more than 1 billion euros in assistance, with half of that amount allocated to military aid. Additionally, Lithuania has earmarked 35 million euros for the purchase of Czech ammunition under this initiative. In addition to drone procurement, Lithuania plans to launch a program for the rehabilitation of wounded Ukrainian military personnel. The country also intends to contribute to the development of infrastructure in Lviv, Zhytomyr, and Dnipro by allocating 15 million euros from various funding sources. Additionally, Lithuania has delivered a new batch of M577 tracked armored personnel carriers to Ukraine. This is reported by their defense ministry on April 6th. The Lithuanian Defense Ministry noted that the latest shipment of M577 carriers in Ukraine they arrived in Ukraine overnight, although the exact number of vehicles wasn't specified. In addition to providing military equipment, this was already mentioned about the rehabilitation for soldiers. Ukraine and Finland have signed an agreement to deepen their defense cooperation and support for Ukraine's fight against Russian aggression. The 10-year pact demonstrates Finland's long-term commitment to assisting Ukraine. It covers various areas such as political backing, military aid, support for Ukraine's defense and security sectors, and assistance with reforms and reconstruction efforts. Additionally, Finnish President Alexander Stubb announced that his country will provide an additional military aid package worth 188 million euros to help Ukraine continue its defense against the Russian invasion. Finnish officials stated that since the full-scale invasion began, Finland has allocated approximately $2 billion in total support for Ukraine. Beyond military assistance, Finland participates in various initiatives aimed at bolstering the country. In March 2024, Finland contributed $30 million towards purchasing artillery shells as part of the Czech initiative, and Finland plans to double ammunition production to aid Ukraine, and they've invested about 24 million euros to boost heavy ammunition manufacturing and securing long-term orders from Finnish industries. Netherlands Defense Minister Kaja Ollongren, I should learn more Dutch names, has announced that the Netherlands will provide Ukraine with a total of 24 F-16 fighter jets. She made this statement in an interview with an Ukrinform correspondent at The Hague. Ollongren emphasized that the transfer of the F-16 fighters will occur once everything is prepared, including the training of Ukrainian pilots and technicians, as well as the necessary infrastructure for the aircraft. She noted that the effort is a collaborative one involving Ukraine, Denmark, the United States, and several other countries. The defense minister acknowledged that the process is complex, but assured that it will indeed happen. The coalition involved in the initiative aims to commence the delivery of F-16 fighters, starting with those from Denmark, followed by the Netherlands, and there are hopes that it will begin this summer. There were earlier reports that indicated the Netherlands does plan to deliver the first batch of F-16 fighters to Ukraine in the second half of 2024 at some point. On April 5th, the Japanese government unveiled its decision to prohibit exports of 164 goods to Russia, encompassing items like automobile engine oil and optical equipment, as reported by the GG Press News Agency. This ban, slated to commence on April 17th, is part of Tokyo's sanctions against Russia in response to its aggression towards Ukraine. The goods listed are those deemed potentially capable of bolstering Russia's industrial capabilities. Japanese Trade Minister Ken Saito affirmed during a press conference the commitment to enforce the export and import ban with the cooperation of the international community. The list of restricted items encompasses technical and industrial products such as batteries, various electrical equipment, steel products, as well as leisure items like yachts and sporting vessels. Additionally, the Japanese Trade Ministry amended a ministerial notice to prohibit imports of Russian non-industrial diamonds used in jewelry, with the measure taking effect on May 10th. The G7 nations, including Japan, declared in December 2023 their intention to initiate import bans on Russian diamonds starting from the beginning of 2024. Despite refraining from providing military assistance to Ukraine, Japan has expressed solidarity with the country in its struggle during the full-scale invasion. President Zelensky recently disclosed that Japan has extended over $12 billion in non-military aid to Ukraine since the onset of the invasion. According to the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, the United States will continue to take decisive action against Iran and its associated transport companies facilitating the shipment of weapons to both Russia and Iranian proxy groups in the Middle East. In a recent statement, OFAC announced the imposition of a new sanctions on OceanLink Maritime DMCC for its involvement in transporting Iranian goods on behalf of Iran's military. Brian Nelson, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, emphasized Washington's commitment to disrupting Iran's capacity to finance terrorist entities and to support Russia's aggression against Ukraine. NATO presently lacks conclusive evidence confirming that Iran has transferred ballistic missiles to Russia. However, the alliance does anticipate that more transfers may occur in the future. Furthermore, in March, European Union leaders cautioned that potential EU repercussions await Iran should they furnish Russia with ballistic missiles. They also called upon the European Commission to devise additional sanctions against Iran for its backing of Russia's belligerent actions in Ukraine. Reuters reported on Tuesday that Novatek, Russia's top liquefied natural gas producer, has halted operations at its Arctic LNG-2 venture due to both Western sanctions and a shortage of specialized gas carriers. With only 3 such tankers constructed and South Korea backing out of further production under U.S. sanctions, Novatek faces significant challenges in transporting the liquefied natural gas, which must be kept at negative 163 degrees Celsius, and the ships must navigate through icy waters. As a result, the project's ambition to capture a fifth of the global liquefied natural gas market by 2030 to 2035 has been hindered. Despite the ongoing construction efforts, the suspension of LNG production until at least the end of June poses a setback to Russia's goal of cornering 20% of the market. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak acknowledged the issue, emphasizing the hurdles associated with securing necessary tankers. Ronald Smith, a senior oil and gas analyst at BCS Brokerage, highlighted the uncertainty surrounding the project's future and the potential prolonged delay in obtaining the required ships. Additionally, foreign investors, including Total Energies, CNPC, CNOOC, and Mitsui JOG MEC Consortium, have withdrawn from the project due to sanctions, leaving Novatek to bear the project's financial burden independently. The sanctions have also disrupted essential equipment production, such as the ice-class LNG carriers, which have complicated the project's development. As of April 1st, 2024, Ukraine's international reserves stood at $43 billion, marking an 18% increase in March 2024, as reported by the National Bank of Ukraine via Ukrinform. The notable surge in reserves was attributed to substantial inflows exceeding $9 billion from international partners. The influx surpassed the net foreign currency sales and the nation's foreign currency debt repayments. Several factors contributed to the international reserves. Inflows into the government accounts, coupled with public debt servicing and repayment. The organization that handles the finance of Ukraine reported receiving $9 million. Oh, I mentioned that already. The additional funds. And Ukraine dispersed 728 million USD worth of repayment to the International Monetary Fund. Transactions conducted by the NBU on the foreign exchange market of Ukraine in March 2024. Sorry, the NBU is the financial arm of Ukraine, the Treasury Department, effectively, sold around 1.8 billion on the foreign exchange market and bought 25 million USD to bolster reserves, resulting in a net sale of foreign currency amounting to 1.8 billion about. Reevaluation of financial instruments due to fluctuations in market value and exchange rates also led to a 266 million increase in the worth of assets in March 2024. So as a result, Ukraine's international reserves experienced significant growth in 2023, reaching a total, as I said, of about 40 billion as of January 1st, 2024. And this is a 40% increase over the course of the year. Polish farmers continue to obstruct the movement of trucks at 3 border checkpoints between Ukraine and Poland, the checkpoints Rawa Ruska, Yahodin, and Uchriniv. While they allow a small number of trucks per hour to enter Ukraine, they prevent most trucks from crossing into Poland. Yahodin checkpoint, which can typically handle about 1,200 to 1,400 trucks daily, only saw 70 trucks headed for Ukraine over the past day. The total backlog across these 3 obstructed checkpoints is over 400 trucks waiting to cross. The blockade has also indirectly caused queues to build up at other previously unobstructed checkpoints, such as Krakowec and Shahini, with around 550 and 450 trucks respectively stuck there as of this morning. The Polish farmers do not impede the movement of non-freight vehicles, and their protests released right now are purported to only target truck transport. Their motivations for blocking freight trucks specifically have not been stated explicitly by the groups. Czechia's Minister of Transport, Martin Kupka, has alleged that Russia has made numerous attempts to interfere with European railway networks in a bid to destabilize the EU and sabotage critical infrastructure. Since the commencement of Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Kupka claims there have been thousands of attempts by Russia to compromise these systems, particularly targeting signaling systems and the network of Czech national railway operator České dráhy. These cyber attacks have previously disrupted ticketing systems and have raised concerns about the potential for accidents if signaling systems are successfully compromised. The Financial Times cited a report from the EU Agency for Cybersecurity published in March, which highlighted the increased threats to transport, specifically noting attacks against railway companies, largely attributed to Russia. The report pointed out that major cyber attacks by groups sympathetic to Russia on railway companies in Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and Estonia. Additionally, the Czech cybersecurity agency, NUKIB, has cautioned that a rise in cyber attacks in recent years, and they particularly targeted energy and transportation sectors. According to their report published in July, malicious actors have shown a growing interest in these areas. In a broader context, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity has also issued a warning about the increasing risk of attackers employing artificial intelligence to influence the European parliamentary elections in June with disinformation. Volodymyr Kudrytsky, CEO of Ukraine's state power operator Ukrenergo, advocates for the decentralization of electricity production across the country as a crucial measure to safeguard Ukraine's energy system from severe consequences of Russian attacks. He proposes the construction of numerous smaller power plants to achieve the decentralization, emphasizing that the current concentration of generation in a few sites exacerbates the vulnerability when enemy shelling occurs. Kudrytsky highlighted the resilience of a small dispersed power system compared to a massive one, or a concentrated one, suggesting that such attacks would not cause the same level of disruption to the energy system as experienced presently. According to Ukrenergo's assessments, the addition of the solar and wind power plants already under construction, Ukraine's power grid requires additional balancing technologies. These include new forms of thermal generation, such as utilizing waste from the woodworking and agricultural sectors rather than coal. So in other words, they need things that they can sort of burn, for lack of a better term, when they have less power so that they can generate more power. Furthermore, Kudrytsky stressed the need for gas peakers and electricity storage systems distributed geographically throughout the country to enhance the flexibility and the energy system during stress periods. He notes that the damage to thermal and hydroelectric power plants has negatively impacted the system's balancing capabilities. Moreover, he mentions a recent attack by Russia on a rear solar power plant, indicating that this was the first such major attack of the war on like a solar generation plant. Russia's escalation of attacks on the Ukraine's power grid was particularly notable in late March, and this has heightened concerns about the energy grid. These attacks, including strikes on Kharkiv's energy infrastructure and assaults on thermal and hydroelectric power plants, aim to exploit vulnerabilities in Ukraine's air defense capabilities. The goal appears to be the collapse of the energy grid, potentially impeding Ukrainian efforts to expand its defense industrial base. Ukrainian Energy Minister Halyshenko stated that depending on the situation in July and August, they will request that people conserve energy as much as possible. And he expressed confidence that the Russians cannot cause a recurrence of the blackouts that were experienced in 2022 and 2023. Even in the event of significant damage, he stated that there would be significant basic generation capacity that would cover 30 to 50% of the country's energy needs. The official acknowledged the possibility of an electricity tariff increase for households and mentioned that the government is exploring this and other options to finance the repair of energy infrastructure destroyed by Russia. Halyshenko highlighted that the current situation is more challenging compared to last year due to the substantial loss of hydropower production and the need for planned repairs of existing nuclear units that just happened to occur this year. German TV channel ARD conducted an investigation revealing the involvement of companies such as Knauf and WKB Systems in construction activities within the city of Mariupol, which is under Russian occupation. This revelation was significant considering an earlier report by another journalist in Germany, Armin Korper, from the German public broadcaster ZDF, as he created a report which was filmed from his post in Moscow that presented a distorted and idealistic image of life in Russian-occupied Mariupol. Following these revelations, the German government issued a stern response. Berlin warned German companies against participating in projects supporting the Russian presence in Mariupol. A spokesperson from the Foreign Ministry criticized the so-called reconstruction efforts, labeling them as vehicles for Russian propaganda. The German spokesperson emphasized that any company involved in such activities should reconsider the nature of their contributions. Additionally, a representative from the Ministry of Economy suggested that authorities investigate whether German companies engaged in these projects are in violation of sanctions. These developments elicited strong reactions not only from government bodies, but also experts and journalists within Germany. Ukraine's ambassador to Germany, Alexei Makiev, noted a sharply negative response among many German experts and journalists, including co-workers and colleagues of Korper at ZDF, in reaction to his distorted portrayal of Mariupol. According to a report from UK Defense Intelligence, Russia has taken control of around 180 companies valued at approximately $11.5 billion since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started. The report indicates that foreign-owned companies, particularly those owned by Russians residing abroad, have been targeted for takeover. Moreover, the Kremlin has been reallocating the seized assets to business figures aligned with the Russian government and supportive of the war in Ukraine. This process of deprivatization appears to be aligned with Vladimir Putin's vision of cultivating a new nationalist elite during the conflict. Increased defense spending, coupled with economic sanctions and capital outflows from Russia since the commencement of the invasion, have likely intensified financial pressures on the Russian state and driven them to drastic actions like this. Russia has focused in particular on consolidating control over companies operating in strategic sectors, such as defense, as part of this broader economic strategy. On April 4th, 2024, Finland made the decision to extend indefinitely the closure of its border with Russia. The government also added several ports to the list of locations prohibited for travel. This move comes as a response to Russia's tactics of deliberately directing undocumented migrants towards Finland's eastern border, a strategy referred to as weaponizing migration. Last year, following a surge of migrants crossing from Russia, Finland shut down 13 of its land entry points along the border. The Finnish government accused Moscow of intentionally channeling undocumented migrants to Finland's border in an effort to sow instability as a retaliatory measure after Finland had joined NATO. While Finland previously stated the border closure would last until April 14th, Interior Minister Mari Rantanen explained that authorities had witnessed no significant changes in the situation over recent months that would warrant reopening the border. Rantanen portrayed this as a long-term issue, saying that they haven't seen anything this spring that would lead them to conclude that they should open the border again. Finland's accession to NATO last year angered Russia as it abandoned decades of military non-alignment and additionally signed a defense pact with the United States, moves prompted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Though the border remains closed, some asylum seekers continue arriving from Russia. The government anticipates migrant numbers could rise substantially with warmer spring temperatures. Rantanen stated that there are hundreds and possibly thousands of people close to Finland's border on the Russian side that could be instrumentalized against Finland, using this term to describe alleged Russian tactics of directing migrants to pressure Finland and the EU over Ukraine's support. According to reports from Bloomberg and other sources, China has intensified its support for Russia in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This support includes providing geospatial intelligence, microelectronics, and other crucial military components. The United States has expressed concern over this issue, warning its European allies about China's increased military assistance to Russia. Despite portraying itself as neutral in the Russia-Ukraine war, China has maintained a deep alliance with Moscow, characterized by what Russian President Vladimir Putin and China have termed a friendship without limits. China's refusal to condemn Russia's actions in Ukraine has drawn criticism from various quarters. Recent developments indicate a significant uptick in military support from China to Russia, including the provision of satellite imagery for military purposes. I should mention that Wagner has been buying private satellite information from China for a long time. I assume that this is now official MOD stuff. Also providing microelectronics and machine tools and other parts for tanks. Chinese shipments of advanced CNIC, or computer numerical control machine tools, to Russia have increased dramatically since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, with China emerging as the primary supplier of these precision milling devices. U.S. President Biden raised these concerns with President Xi Jinping regarding China's support for the Russian defense industry, and emphasized the provision of various military components that China is providing. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has briefed European allies regarding this support and urged actions against Chinese entities that are facilitating these transfers in Europe. The deepening alliance between China and Russia is demonstrated by record trade levels and concerns over technology transfers between the countries by the United States. And this has prompted intensified efforts by the U.S. to curb China's support for Russia's defense industry and the invasion of Ukraine. And Treasury Secretary of the U.S. Janet Yellen has issued warnings to various Chinese companies against providing material support during recent meetings in Guangzhou. The next topic. Ukraine is creating a new military ombudsman office called the Central Directorate for the Protection of Service Members' Rights within the Defense Ministry. This directorate will focus on safeguarding the rights of Ukrainian soldiers who have voiced numerous complaints and frustrations, especially regarding issues like rotation policies and the demobilization process. Reporting directly to the defense minister, the new directorate will be responsible for ensuring proper military benefits such as leave allowances, social guarantees, and medical care for troops. It will investigate violations like the lack of provisions, denied leave requests, abuse by commanders, medical negligence, breaches of social benefit guarantees, and cases of gender inequality. Defense Minister Rustem Umerov stated that this centralized approach provides a comprehensive system to protect the rights of soldiers and their families through inspections and measures to restore any violated rights. The model is inspired by long-standing effective military ombudsman institutions in countries like Sweden, Norway, Austria, Germany, Canada, Ireland, the Czech Republic, and Belgium. South Korea has pledged a significant aid package of $2.3 billion US dollars to Ukraine, commencing this year. This announcement was made by South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul during a gathering of NATO's Indo-Pacific partner nations, as reported by Ukrinform, citing Yonhap news agency. Additionally, Seoul has committed $12 million for the rehabilitation of injured Ukrainian soldiers, facilitated through the NATO Trust Fund designed for aiding Ukraine. Cho reiterated South Korea's steadfast support for Ukraine during the meeting in a speech. The South Korean Foreign Ministry expressed concerns regarding North Korea's provision of weaponry to Russia, emphasizing its repercussions not only for Europe's security, but also for the Korean Peninsula and broader Indo-Pacific region. He highlighted the potential threat posed to the global non-proliferation regime by Moscow's transfer of military technology and the supply of refined oil to Pyongyang. The meeting convened with representatives from NATO partner countries in the Indo-Pacific area, including Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. Additionally, Ukraine this week received 70 ambulance vehicles from the Korean government, as previously reported by Ukrinform. So that concludes all of the headlines for this week. That was a lot of news to get through. I had a little boomer moment at the beginning there, so sorry about that, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. And now I will turn it over to Germany to Ukraine. I believe you just have one little item for us this week. Is that correct, sir?
Yes. One little item, and also very sorry about the blooper at the beginning of your news segment.
No, it's my fault. I'm dumb. It was completely
No,
my
I
fault.
mean something else. You probably missed it. Jonathan actually accidentally turned on my second monitor without me noticing it.
Ah,
It's fine. It's fine. Just my private bookmarks, just my private browser. Don't worry. Yeah, no. Back to the.
I'm going to be editing this stream a bit, I think. Moving on.
No, really, no big issue. It's like that's why you have folders, right? To not have like 1,000 bookmarks open.
It's like vacation season in Europe or something. A lot of the Tochnyi teams away. Erland is on holiday. Biennale, of course, is in Ukraine right now. Just a bunch of folks at Tochnyi are away. So we've been left to man the fort, and we're doing okay, but we might struggle a bit. Sorry. So we will.
I should add that that was totally my fault, and I clicked the wrong button. We do have quite a lot of the Tochnyi team in Rome for some reason. We've got like 3 members of the Tochnyi team in Rome at the moment, and they're sending all kinds of interesting photographs from that corner of the world. But yeah, sorry, Maurice, over to you.
No worries. Back to the news. I just have one very little item, and that's that we got more details on the latest German military aid package pledged in March 2024. In addition to the 290,000 155 shells pledged in this package, 100 protected infantry not infantry fighting vehicles, but protected infantry vehicles were also promised at the time. We now know, due to the new details, that these are actually MRAPs, so not just lightly armored vehicles, but heavily armored mine-resistant vehicles. The exact brand, however, is not publicly known yet. Also new is the fact that 2 EW systems, so electronic warfare systems, 4 M3 amphibious bridging vehicles, and 5 mobile smart factories will also be supplied. The smart factories should be of particular interest here because it makes it possible to produce spare parts for military vehicles in extra large 3D printers on the fly. So when you're close to the front line, you have these metal boxes where extra large human-sized 3D printers are in it, and then you can print some spare parts for a big truck or something else when you have the file on hand. And just so very good help. And that's the all the details we got. By the way, in the video I just showed, that's the M3 amphibious vehicles, the amphibious bridging vehicles. As far as I know, or if I recall correctly, the Dutch have pledged 6 of these to Ukraine last year, and now Germany 4, so it's 10 in total. And the video you now see, that is these mobile smart factories. I believe, when I recall correctly, they got introduced by Rheinmetall in 2023, so it's a very new system. And they're going to be in Ukraine very soon. And that's all I had to say for this week.
Part of Germany's ongoing quest to containerize everything.
I mean, it's when it's in a container, right? You can put it on the truck and drive it anywhere. So I can see it's not like it doesn't look good, but it's functional, it works, and I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah, and it's also Iris-T, right? It can also be containerized. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just, I don't know, just seems like a pattern in the German military. And as you said, I mean, it makes perfect logistical sense why you'd want to containerize this stuff. I mean, that's how heavy stuff gets shipped around the world in a civilian context. So if you can containerize it, it opens a pathway for a lot of like smaller militaries to use it. And then just in general, I think it makes the whole process like less expensive for, you don't need these fancy specialized equipment or vehicles to use it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I mean, it makes perfectly sense, and I don't think it's a specific German approach. I don't think that Germany is the only country who does this kind of thing to put everything in containers or make it more mobile, right? Maybe we are. I'm not focusing that much on other nations or on other military aid. I mean, it's not specific military, right? And I mean, you can do basically a lot of stuff with these 3D printers. They're just suitable because they came from Rheinmetall, and Rheinmetall supplies hundreds of logistical vehicles to Ukraine. It makes perfectly sense to use them for the Rheinmetall vehicles, of course. Although Rheinmetall also repairs and overhauls and refurbishes their own trucks already in Ukraine. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's super impressive. They can move these factories around and 3D print spare parts in real time. Like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think you heard my little report on the Mariupol situation. I know you had a little tweet about that. I just wanted to make sure I kind of covered everything. Is there anything I missed? Because I obviously didn't listen to the news, the press conference, like in German. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, not really. Like you rephrased some stuff, but the words behind it are not 100% the same, but they mean the same. So everything was fine with your report. You didn't miss anything. Everything is great. Don't worry.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't fishing for compliments on my report, but I guess good to know I was comprehensive.
You were.
No, I just wanted to make sure we covered it all because I know you actually listened to the interview, whereas I just went and found a couple of press, secondhand reports about it. So, here on Tochnyi, we always try to get to the source, right? So I was trying to, but it sounds like they covered it reasonably well.
Yeah, you did fine. Everything was fine. And actually, it's a bit off related, like off topic. But I don't know if it's just a German thing. For those who don't know, in Germany we have something like the Bundespressekonferenz. Like that's in English the Federal Press Conference, and we have that 3 times a week, where spokespersons from all important ministries are inside one room, and you can, as a reporter, you can go to this room, to this press conference, and you can ask all the ministries at the same time, basically all the questions you want, 3 times a week, on Monday, on Wednesday, and on Friday. And so yeah, at the end of the sentence, I really don't know why I tell you this, but I just felt that I had to tell you this. I'm sorry. I don't know why I was laughing so much. I'm sorry, I have a moment. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I wanted to ask if it's also the case in other countries, or if it's just in case it just...
I'm not sure, honestly.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, so I think I guess Jonathan, do you feel like
Q&A, guys? We've got loads of questions from the audience for
yeah.
wonderful segments.
You want to do Q&A first?
Yeah, I'll put a couple up here. So first up, we definitely owe faithful viewer Kellen. Sorry, Kellen, I'm just trying to find your question here and put up on the screen in the standard manner. Here we go. There it goes here. Right, I finally clicked a button correctly. The only way is up. The only
Maurice,
way
you got a hot mic, buddy.
So this is 2 German aids.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still having issues with laughing, so I try to calm down. Yeah,
It happens. It's
It's great.
yeah. I have a moment. I'm very sorry, guys.
Finally got asked too many questions about Taurus and he snapped.
Okay, should I read the question because it's related to me, or
Please, yes. Yeah.
okay? To German aid, Germany took the initiative to find more Patriots for Ukraine. Where do you think any new Patriot systems would come from, aside from the US? That's a great question, and it's really interesting because I saw the presentation by Kuleba and Baerbock, so our foreign minister and Kuleba, and I didn't interpret this as a new initiative led by Germany, to be honest. Although everyone reports on a new initiative, it was just more like, hey guys, search for everything and then send it to Ukraine, not like a full initiative like the Czechs are, for example, doing, because everyone is sending the money to Czechia and they are buying all the ammunition. So yeah, just want to point that out. I don't think it's in a German initiative. It's just that Germany is calling on other nations to find air defense systems for Ukraine, specifically Patriots, together with Kuleba. So first that. Second, I think that's very hard, because there are not a lot of, especially regarding Patriots, there are not a lot of users who are willing to provide Ukraine with Patriots. From the current ones within NATO, except from the US, it's just Germany and the Netherlands. I'm not sure how many Patriot systems or batteries the Netherlands has, but I suspect it's not a lot, and they're not willing to provide them to Ukraine, since they have only, and it's not only, that's great help, but they've only given 2 launchers and missiles to Ukraine. Germany has already sent 2 out of our 13 to Ukraine, and the one of the remaining systems is just a schooling system, which is not fully functional. We had a lot of Patriot systems stationed in other countries, 3 in Poland, for example, 2 in Slovakia, 1 in Lithuania at the time, and so we have not really much to spare, because we need most of them for NATO for the remaining. The other ones we now will get delivered, I think it was 2027, so in 3 years. So, and I don't think that anyone who's now giving Patriots away to Ukraine and newly ordering them is getting them faster. So people have to take into account that these systems would miss in the other armies for like many years at least. And Patriot systems are also not very cheap, right? It's like one system, how much is it? 500, 600 million euros, plus missiles, spare parts, blah, blah, blah. That's a high share of what countries have provided to Ukraine in 2 years of the war, right? That's a huge commitment of a single country to send Patriot equipment to Ukraine. And to the other countries, I believe Spain operates Patriot, Sweden operates Patriot, Poland just recently. I don't think they will provide anything to Ukraine besides them mocking Germany not sending enough Patriot systems to Ukraine. Sweden maybe, but at the end there's like I really don't expect anything, to be honest. I'm very sorry, but maybe one system coming together from everybody else, but nothing more besides missiles and spare parts, maybe, like especially regarding Patriot. I mean, what we could do is order new ones for Ukraine, but this will, of course, also take time. I think it comes down to other air defense. So Iris TSLM, which is already in production for Ukraine, Iris TSLS, which is already in production for Ukraine, SEMT, NASAMS, which is also in production for Ukraine. So yeah, and providing air defense capabilities from army stocks, of course. I can't talk a lot about other nations. I can just say Germany doesn't have really air defense capabilities besides the Patriots. We have given all the Gepards to Ukraine, which were not in service with our armies. We don't operate IRIS-T, SLM ourselves, and wait for our systems until Ukraine got theirs. And yeah, so I really don't know what I should think of this initiative, besides maybe some very small systems, maybe some ammunition and spare parts. I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that's the answer I can give you. Because all the other operators, I mean, I can look it up at Wikipedia very shortly because I really don't know, but I think the other nations are nations not inside NATO, which are not aiding Ukraine at all. So, yeah. Regarding Patriot, the only country who actually can give Ukraine many systems or more systems fast is the US, because they operate how many? Joseph, do you know? 60, 70, something like this?
Yeah, something close to that.
Yeah, so they can give, but the problem is the aid, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like I want to say last year or a few months ago, we can't say for sure, but it looks like Ukraine bought a system directly from Raytheon, and Raytheon like expedited it, and this cost them kind of an arm and a leg to do that. So my guess would be based on that it's just real hard to come by. Someone mentioned here, like, could we maybe get some from Middle Eastern nations or like Gulf countries? I would guess based on the geopolitical situation happening there right now that they were already pretty hesitant to give up any kind of air protection, and now they're probably very hesitant. So, I think as Maurice correctly pointed out, like in terms of Patriot batteries, and I think it was this week it was mentioned, Russia's using these hypersonic missiles now, and ballistic threats, and I think that they mentioned that like Patriots proven to be the one that's really effective against that stuff. I mean, obviously these other air defense systems work for other threats like cruise missiles and things like that, but I think they really stress that Patriot's been the one, handling those really high level threats. It's very important. I think ultimately it's going to be new production coming directly off of Raytheon's production lines. And maybe if the U.S. can make some tough decisions and start, taking some batteries out of the U.S. and handing them to Ukraine, I think it would be money very well spent or equipment very well spent, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you always have to imagine that Patriot systems are freaking expensive, and that's probably what a lot of countries are avoiding, because that's a huge contribution at one time, right? I mean, like one Patriot battery is like most of the, for example, Belgian military aid to Ukraine for the whole year. Just to put that in perspective, I believe when I remember Jeff talking about, I believe he said like something around 600 million, and they have for this year, which is a lot for Belgium. So that's a huge contribution to just go to the manufacturer and say, hey, we're spending 600 million or 500 million, whatever, go and deliver a Patriot battery for Ukraine. It's like you can't give any more aid to Ukraine when you don't get additional funding for the whole year. And that's also what I always emphasize about Germany, for example. Although we have like 7.1 something billion in military aid this year, before the start of the year, like I believe it was like 3.5 billion euros were already contracted. So it's more like 4 and something. And of these 4 and something billions for this year, like most of the stuff is already contracted. And we just have April, right? It's people always forget how expensive, especially Patriot, but also other equipment is. To answer another question or a statement made by Ozzy in the chat, maybe Europe needs to start working on an indigenous air defense system. Because my English is not the best, indigenous means, Joseph?
Like a locally produced, like your own.
Okay, yeah. So like Iris TSLM, for example.
Right.
Right, it's a German produced, completely German produced system, and I think this is also, for example, which is great, the ESSI, yeah, the European Sky Shield Initiative, which was launched by Scholz. I know a lot of people criticize Scholz, but I think the ESSI was a great initiative by him that, to explain it very briefly, other nations buy the same air defense capabilities. You have Iris TSLM, for example, you have Patriot on the other hand, and nations are working together, contracting together, and have the same air defense capabilities to make it operational around the nations around Europe. And like Austria is interested, Switzerland, Latvia, Lithuania, they have contracts, and Germany, of course, also. There are a lot of countries involved in this, and this is some where I think that's locally produced. SEMT is France Italian, when I remember right.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's also a local one. It's not like there only exists Patriots, right? It's not. Patriot is a great system, but we have locally produced air defense systems with RST, not SLM, but SLX, for example, which is under development right now. There's a new air defense system coming from Deal with greater range. I believe the range is then expanding from 40 to 80 kilometers. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and that's just two examples with SMD, and there's of course NASAMS, and there's a lot of going on. I don't think we have issues with that. The only issue is the production rates, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember we were having a conversation at some point, like just some people in the Tochnyi group, and I think probably John was saying like it'd probably be better for Europe to focus on certain. For example, like does Europe really need to develop their own fighter? Does Europe really need to develop their own Patriot system? What they should do is license U.S. production, right? Like he was saying, like Germany should produce Patriot systems and missiles, and that seems smart to me. And then focus on developing other systems that they can't get easily from the U.S., right?
Yeah, and I mean we have that, right? We have the license production for not for systems but for missiles, for example. Here in Germany, we'll get that started now. But the first missiles, I believe it was like 1,000 in total, bought at MBDA Deutschland from Germany and some other nations together. I believe it was Germany 500 Patriot missiles, and some other nations, and then together it was like 1,000 in a contract. But also this production, and because the stuff is just starting now, gets delivered in a couple of years at first, right? And so it's not, yeah. And to answer a private question, because Jonathan said from Colby, IRIS-T production, missiles, radar production, but launchers and engagement control, maybe not. As far as I know, the launchers are getting also produced at Deal locally in Germany, and the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, gets produced by Airbus. I don't know if that's done in France or in Germany, to be honest. But it's just one small part. Except for this, everything else is produced locally in Germany. Just to answer the private question.
Jonathan, you got another question loaded up, or I can try one?
Yeah, a couple here. Yes. So a couple from Helen. So we've got, I think there's consensus on this one, if I'm not mistaken. So Russia seems to have changed tactic from massive attacks to continuous attacks on energy infrastructure. I think there's consensus. This has been happening at an increased or continuous rate. Can Ukraine's energy infrastructure be fixed before next winter? I think there's broad agreement that despite the Russia's constant attempts to starve Ukraine of energy, that Russia's attacks last winter, the winter that's just been, have been less successful than the winter prior. I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, I read a report during the news report from Ukrainian, which is like the largest energy producer in Ukraine. There's a few other companies, but I would say that they're probably the people to talk to when it comes to like Ukraine's energy situation. They seem pretty confident that it's not going to be as bad as last winter. That seemed to be something that they were fairly confident in. I don't think they were super confident in terms of their ability to repair everything. It sounded like the hydroelectric is basically out of commission for the foreseeable future. That was kind of the vibe I got from their statements, and that repairing a lot of this stuff, like they're still working on coming up with a mechanism to fund the repairs, right? So that would imply like we don't really know when it's going to be done. If we don't even know how we're going to pay for it, then who knows when it's going to be done. So there are certainly a lot of people in Ukraine right now that are experiencing like rolling blackouts. They basically like black out occasionally to save power. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine right now as a result of Russia's targeted attacks. But I think that it seems like the Ukrainians are more confident than they were last year in their ability to deal with the attacks themselves, and that it won't like shut the country down or the economy down. But that said, I don't want to like undersell the current severity of the situation. There's a lot of people that are suffering severe humanitarian crisis as a result of Russia's like destruction of power infrastructure. And that affects not just power for your iPhone. It affects like the ability for them to purify water in the city and like move sewage around, and like it's not just about like electricity. So it's a big deal. But I think overall it seems like they're pretty confident that they can keep the lights on in the country better than last year. I don't know, anything else you want to add, Jonathan?
That's well said, and it leads into another question here, which has been answered by John in the past, and it's right, just lost it in the chat. It's about it's from Kellen. Have we seen evidence of North Korean supplied ballistic missiles? I'll just try and bring it up because I have to scroll the way up. But this one here. Have you seen any evidence of North Korea around transferred ballistic missiles to Russia yet? John, correct me if I'm wrong here, but John did a piece on Tochnyi about a month ago confirming the use of North Korean Iskander type weapons, ballistic missiles to be precise, used against Ukraine. And we've also seen those used against Kharkiv, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think John was like confident enough to say that it was, but I'm not sure that like it would hold up like at the UN if you showed them pictures of it and like said, see this serial number, it's North Korean or something. But yeah, I think John seemed fairly confident. I remember what you're talking about. As far as like actual stuff that like countries have taken to the UN to try to prove that North Korea is selling Russia ballistic missiles. I know that they were taking like satellite imagery of container ships like moving to Russia, right? And we have clear evidence that Russia provided North Korea with pretty substantial technology transfers and like refined petroleum products, right? So North Korea, you guys might know this, but just in case you don't, has like a real problem with, it's a very mountainous country. They don't have a lot of arable land. And so they need a lot of like chemical fertilizers. They don't have their own oil, right, or ability to refine it. So they need a lot of like chemical fertilizers, and in order to fertilize the land, and also to like they need gasoline or diesel to like run the tractors to like have a mechanized agriculture that could produce enough food to feed their population. So it seems like Russia's providing pretty significant support to North Korea, and that would imply pretty heavily that North Korea is providing something of great value to Russia, right? Obviously, they're providing some crappy artillery shells, but that doesn't that's like $2 billion worth of artillery shells. It seems like Russia's giving them more than that. So I think all that to say, it's like heavily, heavily, heavily implied to the point where I think we can basically say it's happening here on Tochnyi. But in terms of like a foreign government making the accusation to Russia and North Korea and having it stick like at the UN, I don't think we're quite there yet, but that's just my take. Yeah. You guys have anything you want to add about that?
Not about that, but I would have something actually just to add just a small thing about the energy crisis, I would say, if that's okay. But we
Okay.
can do because we just had the question, and I just want to add when I can share my screen for a second. Hold on. Okay. Just to give you a small information, for example, when these energy blackouts happen, there's a lot of donations going on for generators and other stuff. Just to name one example from Germany, because I'm just focusing on Germany. I'm sure that other nations are also providing a lot. The THW, which is the Germany's Federal Civil Protection Agency, disaster relief, if you want to explain it like that. They, for example, in February said that they are providing a gas generator, a very powerful one, donated by Audi, by the way, the car brand, to the front line in Ukraine for a hospital. So it's powerful enough to fund, or this is the one here, to actually power a whole hospital at the front line. And but this is where the donated generators and stuff like this gets bundled, right? It's always like when you donated a power generator or something else, it's always for critical infrastructure or for like hospitals or other things, right? So it's not like nobody's supporting Ukraine with energy, like generators, transistors, or spare parts for all these kind of stuff. But they are getting bundled at locations where they don't reach, or mostly don't reach, at least in my opinion or experience, the civil population. So the households still have no power, but when you go to the hospital and need something, there's everything powered. Just wanted to add that. And I don't find it anymore, but the EU, for those who don't know, they have great overview. Here we have it. I think this is the last update made. The EU actually published the map, not only with generators and transformers, but also with other stuff like medical evacuations. This is one of my sources for my reporting for my personal project, for example. And there you can see that actually a lot of countries are donating power generators and transistors and transformers, stuff to Ukraine. And you can actually look that up, how the numbers are evolved. You see that divided by every country. For example, to take Poland, right? They have donated 568 generators to Ukraine over the course of the war via this EU mechanism, and also 404 transformers. And Latvia, for example, donated a couple. And just to give you an overview, so there's a consistent flow of generators, transformers, and other equipment for infrastructure, for power, for the power grid and stuff like this. It's just it's just not enough, but aid is coming. Just really wanted to point that out, because in
Yeah.
in my opinion, a lot of people think that nobody's aiding to Ukraine. I think it's just not possible to actually replace everything right now, at least in my experience.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you said, it's a good example of something that, like, there's a lot of countries donating this stuff. Like, I mean, even Switzerland, for like countries that would be very hesitant to donate like military aid. This is something that's very easy for them to provide humanitarian aid. And this is one of the avenues that humanitarian, like, for example, Serbia yesterday, I think, underwrote 37 million of their budget for humanitarian aid for Ukraine, which like blows my mind, right? So even in Serbia, you can get a little bit of political traction for humanitarian aid. So yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of countries are providing this stuff. as far as I understand, I'm certainly not an expert in how this equipment is like produced and stuff, but you already, I think, laid out the case pretty well that this is sort of emergency stopgap stuff for critical infrastructure. It's not really making it out into the regular population. And then also that this equipment it's very specialized. It's manufactured only by a few companies, and it's very expensive, and it takes a long time to like make. Like, there's not just a bunch of it laying around, right? So as you said, like, it's just not quite enough considering the amount of the scale of destruction that Russia is leveling on Ukraine and the amount of power generation they need to make up for.
Yeah, agree.
Next question, Jonathan.
Right. Well, as I just scroll through the comments here, I'm going to go to the first one that catches my eye, which is from Paul Gilbert. What happened with the North Korean ship that was stopped in international waters the other day? Did they manage to search it? Well, I'll have a go at this. Unless unless James Bond managed to stop it, I haven't heard anything. What about you guys?
No, I haven't.
No, when you said you were going to field it, I was like, oh, thank God. You hadn't heard anything, and I was like, oh, me neither.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul, we can't answer that one, but we will endeavor
we'll look into it. I'll
check
say,
it out.
I guess at the very least, I can say I've been paying attention on Ukrainian Twitter. I haven't seen anything like bob up to the surface of Ukrainian Twitter regarding it. So I would imagine that, probably nothing happened, but obviously I don't want to assume that. But at the bare minimum, it didn't make enough waves to like make it to Ukrainian Twitter on by either the Twitter of Ukrainians or like pro-Ukraine Twitter.
So in the meantime, I did some Googling. Of course, I just want to highlight nobody of us has worked in detail on this, right? It's also, when I'm just referring to this, it's just Googling. I have not a lot of details on this, but it seems like that South Korea is investigating an unflagged cargo ship over North Korea's sanctions breach and took it to a harbor in South Korea. That's what he's talking about. So there's actually an instance, but besides some basic Google information, I can't say anything about it.
Yeah, I hope they find stuff. I actually, now that you mention it, I do remember that they mentioned that they seized a ship on the basis of the UN like charter saying, you can't give They passed a resolution in the UN that basically said North Korea, you can't give missiles to nobody. And they basically said that South Korea or other countries have the right to search North Korean vessels like on those grounds if they suspect weapon transfers. So I remember that South Korea like asserted that right to do that based on the UN resolution. But yeah, I don't know the result. I have to imagine they're conducting a very thorough investigation right now, and maybe we'll find out if something was there.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Let's also quote it in the article, like under UN Resolution 2397, adopted in 2017, nations have the right to detain, inspect, and seize any vessel within their territorial waters if it's suspected of engaging in illegal activities with North Korea. So it seems. I don't know if it was the case, but it seems like the vessel was actually within South Korea's territorial waters and not international one.
Yeah,
At least when they are quoting this resolution, right? It would make sense.
Yeah, and that was silly of North Korea if they did that. But I think I have, unless you guys have anything else about this, there's a related question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Ozzy Bugga asks, South Korea produces some useful military gear. Yes, they do. I was told they have a constitution that prevents export of arms to a nation at war. Is that correct? So I'm certainly not an expert on South Korean arms or on their laws, but I have heard this come up in a few conversations. As far as I understand, I had the exact wording in my, actually looked up the exact wording. But I think I remember it. So the law says that they can only export weapons for, quote, peaceful purposes. So, I mean, I'm sure it makes more sense in Korean, but at least in English, I'm a bit propounded by that statement. Or confounded. So I think, I mean, I, as far as I can tell, they mean like defense when they say that. But in practice, it really like, you know, on paper, yes, they have this law that says basically they can't supply weapons to something like a country in Ukraine's situation. In practice, as far as I understand, historically they've violated that, or they've I shouldn't say violated it. They've found ways around it, or they've decided to define peaceful purposes differently, right? So, as far as I understand, the law itself isn't really that important to why South Korea is like decides to send weapons or not. um, so that would be kind of my like discussion of the law itself. In terms of like how can South Korea help Ukraine? So I mean, we already mentioned today in my news report right there, they've contributed 2 billion. They very clearly recognize a linkage between the North Korea problem and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So I think that they're pretty active in that situation. I think we're probably going to see more indirect help from North Korea than anything else. So I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I know they have like joint production contracts in Poland, I think, to make some tanks, because Poland is like an insane collector of tanks. They've got like, they're running like 5 different tanks right now. It's pretty nuts. Um, and I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see South Korean partnerships with other European countries, because it just makes economic sense to do it that way. And as a result, those countries will be able to help Ukraine in like directly, right? I don't think we're going to see a lot of like direct help from South Korea to Ukraine. It's just for whatever reason, I'm not sure politically. It seems the same with Japan. They have these ideological or geopolitical or constitutional hurdles in their society that seems to prevent them from being all in on Ukraine, which I guess makes a certain amount of sense considering like how removed they are from the region. But beyond that, it's a bit perplexing to me.
I think, I mean, basically, I absolutely agree with you. But in the case of South Korea, I mean, a lot of people forget that they are basically at war with North Korea. So I can understand that they're not giving really much away, or they don't want to publicly admit that they give something away from army stocks or from reserves, whatever, right? Because that's crucial information for North Korea. For other countries, of course, it doesn't count. In the case of Japan, I would also assume that's the same case, not the exact same case, but the same case with North Korea and Russia. Yeah, just want to highlight that. And also, what I find quite interesting is that these, like, we don't send weapons into conflict zones or into an active war zone or whatever, right? That actually reminds me of Germany in the early stages of the war, like in the early weeks. You know what I mean? When Germany had the excuse of saying, yeah, we don't send weapons into conflict zones, despite us actually making exceptions, for example, for the Peshmerga in the fight against the Islamic State a couple of years ago, where we also sent like hand grenades and pistols and stuff like this. Of course, no big aid, but you know,
More than
um,
helmets.
yeah, I believe we also sent helmets.
Of course you did.
Yeah, but when it's always about these helmets, I always point out, and I need to do it now, I always point out that the delivery of these helmets was agreed in January, so before the war started, and the first military aid to Ukraine during the war was anti-tank weapons and man-pads. Yeah, so everyone is just focusing on these helmets, which were agreed on before the war started. Of course, it's not our brightest day, or brightest moment. But the first aid was actually, anti-tank weapons and stuff to shoot down helicopters and so.
Hey, look, people need helmets. I'm not saying they don't.
Yeah, helmets are available, right? You probably know that famous image of the Ukrainian soldier with that German helmet, and there's a fucking bullet in his helmet.
It was
Yeah,
it was one of Tochny's first pictures of the week.
Yeah, I proposed that. Yeah, I remember. He would be dead without it. Probably save 5,000 lives. Of course, it's nothing compared to tanks or something else, right? But a
yeah.
lot of people underestimate trained personnel, and to prevent trained personnel being lost.
Definitely glad you guys have ramped up from helmets.
Yeah, I would say we made a little step. No, it's great. But back to South Korea, like when I say it reminds me of Germany, I think South Korea, I can understand why they don't want to publicly admit that they are sending military aid to Ukraine. But when it comes from industry, like when they are, I mean, they could, for example, say we're investing these billions and these billions into the industry, like Germany does, for example, or did in 2022, yeah, at the start of the beginning. Like there was no big aid, of course, also big aid, but not as much as people has hoped for from our army stocks from the Bundeswehr. But we made a lot of contracts with industry in Germany and in Slovakia, France. We made contracts everywhere for Ukraine, and these exact contracts are now paying back. Now the deliveries mid 2023. Now everything is going to be Ukraine from these contracts, and I think that's the option for South Korea. And I think they just need to go or undergo this political change. They just don't do it because in my personal opinion, right? It's just my personal opinion. It's for the same reason as you said, they're far away from Ukraine, right? Like how many hours, how many 1,000 kilometers away from Ukraine? It's that, of course, they don't care as much as Europe does, and it's just natural, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I wish, I mean, it's perplexing to me, I'll be honest. Like, if I was Israel, I would say, hey, Iran, every drone that you send to, or I guess like, hey, Russia, every drone that Iran sends to you, we're going to send a drone to Ukraine, right? Or like, North Korea, you're going to send 2 million shells to Ukraine. South Korea is going to send 2 million to Ukraine. In other words, like, South Korea lost that, North Korea lost that military capability when they sent those shells. Like, I think it's okay for South Korea to lose some shells. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, you
it balances
match
out.
the contribution.
Yeah, that seems logical to me. But I mean, these countries seem to have this view that, like, nope, it's complicated. We've got our own problems. I mean, obviously, South Korea is looking at the Korean Peninsula right now. North Korea is developing weapons that are kind of concerning. I'll say, like, John is typically quick to dismiss dumb missiles and stuff, and John seems to think that North Korea's new weapon systems are a bit spooky, at least when it comes to threatening Seoul. So, it's understandable that they're a bit like worried, or that like Ukraine can seem very far away when looking at their problems, right? But I would hope that like people there have a bigger strategic view of the situation and understand that like weakening Russia now is important for dealing with their problem later. And I think we're seeing that. I mean, there's a reason that at the NATO conference, South Korea made a big point to demonstrate at least some pretty significant support for Ukraine. So I think, as you said, they're slowly coming around. I think the longer this it goes on, like the more they'll be on board, especially the more like North Korea gets involved. But it's going to take a while, and I'm not like super. I don't think we're going to hold out for like South Korea to get super involved, honestly. And it is what it is.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight that, in my opinion, I hope, or I wish Danielle was here, but I don't think that the quality of military aid is also like evaluated or taken into account. Like when you basically say an eye for an eye, right? Like North Korea sends 1,000 shells to Russia, South Korea does the same. I don't think that you can compare the actual quality of these shells from North Korea to South Korea, right? And I don't mean that in terms of South Korea should send less. I mean it takes them way more effort to actually replace the military aid they have given to Ukraine than North Korea does. At least in my amateur personal opinion, I would think that because we all probably have seen how low quality the North Korean shells are, right? I would assume that actually replacing them, doing the production locally in North Korea, would be way, way, way faster than when South Korea tries to replace, like, let's say, 100,000 shells they have given to Ukraine.
Yeah, I guess we can just call it a proportional amount, right? I guess like that would be what I would like to see. I would like to see, South Korea and Israel just say, look, our obviously publicly sworn enemies are giving Russia stuff and they're getting technology from Russia. So in order to deter Russia from giving my enemy, i.e. North Korea or Iran, technology that I don't want them to have, I'm going to make it hurt when they do that. So, that would be like I would give some kind of proportional response to deter that behavior. But, what do I know? I'm not Israel or South Korea. I'm sure they've got big strategic plans and conferences and think tanks and whatnot. So, I'm not an expert, but that would be my own like hot take on what they should do, right?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it might be a bit off related, but it's somehow related. I didn't include it in my news report because I actually didn't even tweet about it because I thought it's not significant enough, and you also didn't include it. Scholz was at a not meeting, like in his party at Jesus, I want to say propaganda meeting of his party. No, it's not a propaganda meeting. There was a meeting of his party right outside of Germany. Anyway, he was visiting there. He was doing PR, and in front of all these people, he said one thing where I said that it is actually the right approach. That is what everyone should do, but it's another politician not living up to, how do you say it in English? Not put the money where their mouth is. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So he said that the war could be over when Putin withdraws his troops from Ukraine immediately. And it's not the first time that he said it, but he said one thing what I see, and I'm a close observer of him, right? What I see, he never said before, and that's but Putin only would do it if he sees that he can't win militarily in Ukraine, and that's basically what you say, right? We have to make it as costly for Russia as possible, and it's always crazy that all these statements are being made by other people. In this time it was Scholz, right? But then you see that you don't live or you don't put your money where your mouth is, because when he says that, yeah, then go to I'm not saying it's a game changer, but then deliver towers to Ukraine, for example, or contract 100 Leopard newly built Leopard tanks for Ukraine. Put some big orders, that's what I mean, and that also goes for other countries, not only for Germany, but for other countries. And because he's absolutely, in my opinion, he's absolutely right about that, right? Putin won't end the war unless he sees that he can't win this war. But right now, with with that, what we are doing, I mean, the situation is improving with each day spent, in my opinion. But yeah, just dragging on, just dragging on.
Yep. So I think there's just like a related matter, which is I just saw in chat some talk about like, could we embargo North Korea? Could we punish North Korea somehow? Could we isolate them further for what they're doing? Again, not a North Korea expert. I did some like Soviet studies in school, and we learned a little bit about the relationship between North Korea and the Soviet Union. So maybe I can like give some background here, right? So I think I guess like the TLDR is like, as far as I understand, North Korea is basically about as isolated as they can be, and that's more or less their own fault. It's not necessarily because only of sanctions. Like obviously, like the U.S. is not being part of the U.S. financial system is a big problem, right? But other countries have tried to have economic relationships with North Korea, and it just hasn't worked out for them. North Korea doesn't follow through on its agreements. So a good example of this is Sweden. They sold them like 7,000 Volvos or something in like 1970, whatever. And they were just like, all right, like you pay us overtime. And North Korea was like, sure. And they just didn't pay them. And they were like, are you ever going to pay us? And they tried to get their money back for like 30 years. And then eventually they just gave up and they were like, all right, I guess we never do business with North Korea again. Right. And I think that was the experience of like all the adult economies in the world dealing with this crazy hermit country, was that they weren't reliable to do business with in any meaningful way. And they don't have a lot of stuff that people need. And so I think that's what's really interesting about this Russia thing is, the Soviet Union collapsed, and before they were being directly supported by like Soviet subsidies, right? Again, as I mentioned, like they need gasoline and diesel, and they need nitrogen fertilizers made from like oil refining, right? Like oil creates a bunch of nitrates. Russia takes that, and in a very dirty, gross way, they make fertilizers out of it. And our own farmers in America buy those fertilizers because they make it dirtier than we are ever willing to make it, and so they're way cheaper. So like basically Russia, or the Soviet Union at the time, was giving that away to North Korea for free, and they stopped. And from then on, like North Korea was pretty much screwed, right? Like they don't have a lot of access to the international financial system. They can't just like buy oil from wherever they want. And they didn't have enough fertilizer to like, they could barely feed their population. And then they made a bunch of other dumb decisions we don't need to get into. Like the famine was sort of caused by some of their own internal policies, but a big part of it was like not being propped up by the Soviet Union. China has been like they've supported them a little bit, just enough to make them a bargaining chip on the table for their negotiations with the US and, other Asian countries. But nothing serious has ever been given to North Korea by China. So like in general, North Korea is like about as isolated as you can get. And like, I will say like, it's one of those situations. I hate to say you got to hand it to North Korea, but I think you do in this case, where like they are that isolated and they still manage to accomplish some of the things they have. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it, that like the fact that they're developing missiles that are relatively dangerous, and the fact that even though a quarter of their artillery shells fail, they can make them, right? I mean, it's a little bit impressive considering their level of isolation from the international trade, and they're a complete autarky, right? They believe like in complete self-reliance, and like to have a modern economy exist on those terms. Again, I'm not suggesting that it doesn't come at insane costs, but the fact that they're able to even make it function at all is kind of like incredible. I think like it speaks to maybe the North Korean people, or Korean people, I should say, in general. Like, I don't think Russians would be able to like, pull the grass out of the streets and stuff every day like the North Koreans do. But yeah, I would say like there's not a lot we can do to isolate or punish North Korea any further. And that's the reason we've seen in our negotiations with North Korea in the past, like we try to induce them with good things. We don't have anything left to really, beyond kinetic measures, like beyond actually hurting them, kinetically, meaning like with weapons. Like we've done all we can. They're super isolated. So that leaves like, if you do something good, if you stop testing your missile, we'll give you some food. That's pretty cheap for us. It's a small price for us to pay for them to stop testing their missile, because then we have to test a counter missile that's way more expensive than just giving them a bag of food, right? So in general, I would say like my understanding of the current situation with North Korea, they're pretty isolated. I don't think there's any country even that I could point to that's like, you need to stop cooperating with North Korea. And they've sort of done that to themselves. They just they're not capable of like cooperating on an international level. So they've resorted to like crime. Like they're famous in Asia for counterfeiting money. In Asia, everywhere I went, like handing someone a $20 bill, they're like checking it to see if it's a North Korean forgery. And they're famous for like, crypto schemes and, extortion and stuff like that. So yeah, as far as I know, they're pretty isolated, and yeah, nothing much we can do beyond, again, like you have to make it hurt for Russia. It's the thing that has changed in this equation is that Russia is willing to give North Korea stuff again because North Korea has something they need, which is artillery shells. And I'm sure, because we've seen with the arrangements with Iran, I'm sure they're paying out the nose for it. They're probably paying top dollar for those garbage North Korean shells, right? So North Korea is like, just like a lot of countries that Russia's dealing with right now, like India with the oil, like they're laughing all the way to the bank. So it's just kind of a weird side effect of the war that Russia is suddenly a customer that's willing to buy something that North Korea has in abundance. And, I'm sure North Korea is willing to make more of this stuff. And in exchange, Russia's like, here's some diesel fuel, here's some gasoline, here's some fertilizers, and here's some technology to make your missiles shoot better. And that's really bad for us. So the only thing we have control over in that equation is, again, we have to make it hurt for Russia. Okay, you're going to supply the rogue hermit state of North Korea with a bunch of weapons and more like capabilities so that they can hurt South Korea more. We're going to hurt you if you do that. We need to deter Russia from helping North Korea. And, the 90s, they were on their ass, like they weren't helping them, right? So that would imply that we need to, A, knock Russia down a peg economically, and B, deter them through like acts of deterrence. When they give North Korea stuff or trade with North Korea, we should probably induce them to stop through actions like, oh, you're going to trade with North Korea, we're going to give Ukraine more stuff, or we're going to do Y. Rant over.
Yeah, I think that was very, very specific, and I don't think maybe Jonathan had have something, but I have nothing to add to that. That was very specific and detailed.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, have we got any other questions, Jonathan?
Not that
I
I
got a
can.
little lost. I got a little lost in my own thoughts there for a moment about North Korea. I was thinking back to my days
We
at the
know.
desk learning about North Korea.
It's all right.
I could make a Korean joke now, but I don't do it.
Well, just a quick PSA. We're going to have a couple of interesting interviews coming up, and some more exciting research updates. So we've got a lot of exciting projects going on at the moment at Tochnyi. So thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to, if you do have a question, of course, please DM us anytime at the Tochnyi account. We'll stick it in the chat here, or do it through our website, whichever works best for you. We are going to close out with something which is a little bit different this week. So I think it's it's fair to say there have been so many stories from Kharkiv from the last week alone, and from the past 2 years alone, which nobody describing these attacks can do justice to in words just by themselves. People talk a lot, but some things are beyond words. So I'm just going to bring up the slide because I'd like to give the background for this for anyone who didn't catch this on Telegram or anywhere else this week. Okay. Okay, so the slide isn't loading, but that doesn't matter because I thought that, instead of people talking, words are better replaced by what you're about to see. The individual or individuals for Ukraine's greatest generation for this week are Vladislav Loganov, age 52, Sergei Badalinov, age 32, and Vladimir Matyushenko, 41. They are 3 firefighters from the 6th State Fire and Rescue Unit of the 3rd State Fire and Rescue Squad in Kharkiv. The son of Vladislav Loganov is pictured here. Apologies while we get the slide up.
Russia, of course, has been doing what are called double tap strikes, or sometimes they're referred to by other terms, but basically they hit a site, they wait for emergency service workers to come to the site to rescue people, to dig through the rubble, and then they hit the same site to kill the emergency aid responders.
Which is, of course, a war crime.
Yeah.
No, it's really it's really pathetic. Yeah, you really don't find words for that.
Morris, could you do me a favor and just try clicking on Ukraine's greatest generation, the slide? It doesn't seem to be liking me at the moment.
The scene is already playing.
Ah, is it?
Yeah,
Right.
that's a video scene. That's the
Okay.
only scene which is called Ukraine's greatest generation.
Okay. All right. I can't see that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No problem. So yeah, is it paused at like 20
That's
odd
paused
seconds?
at 25.
Okay, I'll go back to 20 seconds. Right, apologies. So yeah, the son of Vladislav Loganov is pictured here. His name's Vladimir. Both father and son firefighters of Kharkiv, both first responders and citizens of Ukraine and of the major population center that is Kharkiv, long besieged, as we know, by the Russians, who continue to fail. The Russians have failed to defeat these Ukrainians in Kharkiv, but at the cost of so many lives. These firefighters all served their city and country with distinction. So this week on Ukraine's greatest generation, we're going to let the achievements of Kharkiv's people speak. And we're going to do this through music from a quartet from the Kharkiv National Opera. Pictured here is Ukraine's greatest generation, and
I don't know if it's just me who having technical issues, because the video stopped, Jonathan's talking, and I can't hear him. Joseph?
Yeah, I can hear Jonathan. Oh.
I've got massive lag. Hang on. Okay, I'll assume you're looking at the pictures of the 3 firefighters from Kharkiv. Yeah. Okay, quick mic check.
Here, John, there's music. Okay, no more music.
Okay, so yeah, the picture you saw at the end were the 3 firefighters from the 6th State Fire and Rescue Unit from Kharkiv. That's, yeah, Vladislav Loginov, Serhiy Badalinov, and Vladimir Mashuenko. This string quartet that was playing, I should promote them. They're playing in this video for a free concert for the charity Swiss Aid to Ukraine. This was a couple of years ago. The musicians of Ukraine often play for free to keep aid coming in, to keep the lives of Ukrainians present in, to keep their lives present in the minds of Westerners who might, unfortunately, think that this is just another war in amongst the world's other terrible wars. As we know, this is unique. This is our war. And as we all know, it's them living in it and fighting it for us. So they're going to play us out, this string quartet. If I could add, please support the work of Ukrainian musicians wherever you find them. Tell people about them. And let those people know that this is not just another war in the world's many terrible wars, please. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you.